Okay, so in this session, I want to speak directly to the church. Let me step back here so you can see my animated hands at times. I want to speak directly to the church because the church is called the pillar and support of the truth. Now, I mentioned in this session that, what do we mean by the truth? It's the pillar and the support of what truth? Well, I think most likely Paul is talking about the truth of the gospel of Jesus Christ. But do you know that the truth, the concept of truth, is logically prior to the gospel of Jesus Christ? In other words, if there is no such thing as truth, then the gospel is not true. So we have to have a reference point solid in the idea of what truth is. That is, that it corresponds to reality in order for us to say the gospel is true. We're making a reference back to the truth when we say the gospel is true. So it's so important for us to get our hearts and minds around that. And basically, what we're seeing in culture today is the disregard of absolute truth. It has been hijacked, gutted, mugged, destroyed, whatever. Started in the postmodern era, somewhere back in the 70s or 80s, and morphed into this thing we call cancel culture today, or being woke, critical theory. All of these things basically come out of the idea that truth does not exist. That is, objective, absolute truth does not exist. And so we're left with this society, this culture that basically is firing people, canceling people because they don't match up to their idea of what's true. That it's wrong to do X or it's wrong to do Y. Or if you have ever done X, Y, and Z somewhere in your life, then you are out. You are canceled out of life. That's what we're dealing with. So watch this part of our sessions. Number 3, this is the church and truth, or how the church is supposed to be the pillar and support of the truth. Take a look. In 1 Timothy chapter 3, verses 14 and 15, Paul wrote this. He said, I'm writing these things to you, hoping to come to you before long. But in case I'm delayed, I write so that you will know how one ought to conduct himself in the household of God, which is the church of the living God, the pillar and support of the truth. Then again in John 18, Jesus said this. He said, You say correctly to Pilate that I am a king. For this I have been born, and for this I've come into the world, to testify to the truth. Everyone who is of the truth hears my voice. These 2 verses give us a foundation to talk about why truth is important to the church. In an indirect way, Paul tells us that the church is the pillar and support of the truth. The other verses in John tell us that Jesus claimed that the purpose he came into the world was to testify to the truth. What we can draw from these verses is that the church are those who have heard Jesus' voice and are now the pillar and support of the truth. In both these instances, it could be, and perhaps ought to be interpreted, that the truth that we're talking about is the truth about Jesus, and not the truth as a concept of reality. However, without that concept of reality, there is no basis for believing Jesus' life, death, and resurrection happened. The truth of the resurrection has to be a fact, a real fact of history. The claim Jesus was raised from the dead must correspond to what happened. Paul knew this. He understood that truth had to correspond to what's real. Perhaps this is why we have such a strong attack on truth in our culture. Our enemies have attacked the nature of truth and promoted something called religious pluralism. The post-truth culture has promoted the idea that no religion has the truth, but each only has a piece of the truth. The illustration put forward is an old Indian illustration of 6 blind men in a room with an elephant. and each man touches different parts of the elephant and exclaims, "It's a wall," as he touches the side. "It's a tree," as he touches the leg. "It's a spear," as he touches its tusk. And so on, each encounters a part of the elephant. We're supposed to agree that we don't have a complete view of the elephant, meaning reality, nor are we to claim that we alone have the truth of salvation. We're told it's arrogant to do so. However, what goes unnoticed is that the person telling the story is the only one who has the complete view and understanding of reality. The pluralist is the only one who sees the truth about life. This is one of those boomerang arrows. Most people think that all religions have similar beliefs when in fact they differ greatly. Most religions may agree on the surface, but when you get to the core, you find contrasts or contradictions. Obviously, the resurrection of Jesus is central to Christianity. However, Judaism and Islam deny the resurrection and that Jesus is God's Son. So here you have truth claims that disagree and therefore are contrary. Judaism and Islam deny Jesus is God's Son, implying the Trinity doesn't exist. Christianity not only claims Jesus is God's Son, but that Jesus was crucified and then raised from the dead. Both views cannot be true since they contradict each other. Remember the law of non-contradiction? C.S. Lewis said something to the effect that if Christianity is not true, the gospel is of no concern nor consequence. However, if Jesus was raised from the dead and Christianity is true, it is of immense importance, a huge concern and consequence. The church needs to learn its role as pillar and support of the truth, that it stands as support and foundation of the truth of the gospel. There are other areas the church needs to become effective in its witness to the truth. History would be a significant place to proclaim the historical accuracy of the New Testament. There are over 80 facts that demonstrate the accuracy of the eyewitnesses just in the Gospels of John and Luke and the book of Acts. That's just 3 books of the New Testament. There's a lot more to uncover. The church also needs to know the truth about reality in the sciences, as scientists continue to uncover the amazing precision in the created order. Whether we're looking through a microscope or through a telescope, God's fingerprints and truth are found everywhere. Last but not least is morality that is not based on a code, but in the person of God Himself. Goodness is God's essence, as He is the perfection of being revealed in the Scripture. Although God revealed Himself in commandments, these two are based on His invisible attributes and eternal power. The mood of the day is tolerance, but what the culture means by tolerance is not biblical. Culture wants everyone to accept everyone's belief as equal, denying that anyone has a special revelation. Jesus said He came into the world to testify to the truth. The Bible is filled with men who are continually failing to provide the necessary and sufficient conditions for mankind to be restored to God until Jesus appears. He's all that God needs to restore the original intention, a relationship and fellowship with mankind. Religions and culture continue to tinker with the definition of truth and create a notion of reality. But God has spoken through Jesus, who is the truth about God. He's God's truth about salvation. The denial of absolute truth is aimed at deconstructing the gospel message. The church must pick up the charge to witness the definition of truth matching reality and the truth pointed to Jesus as the only name given under heaven by which we must be saved. Sound exclusive? Sound narrow? Remember it is, because all truth is exclusive and narrow, and Jesus is the absolute truth about salvation. Okay, so there we have it. There's the third message or the third session on looking at truth. Maybe it was 45 minutes long, took 40 minutes of your time out of your life, but it ought to give you an understanding of how important truth is, the absolute nature of truth, the objective nature of truth, and what happens when we disregard truth. I'm speaking in March of 2021 when we have a cancel culture. We have a culture that basically disregards absolute objective truth in every sense of the word unless it applies to the beliefs of those perpetrators who are really pushing for the idea that there is no such thing as truth, except, of course, their truth. So I hope you learn this. I hope it's something that you get your heart and your mind around and dig deeper. I would suggest reading Abdul Murray's book, Saving Truth. Excellent, excellent book. And I hope that you will like this video. You can comment on it. And please subscribe to my channel. And look us up on Facebook. And I'm also on RayCiervo.com on the internet. There, if you sign up for my website, if you sign up, you get access to a very brief course, 5 sessions on Introduction to Apologetics. So you'll learn some of the reasons why we believe that Christianity is true. Hope you'll look us up.